Hello, I'm Eric with South Texas Sport Court. Thanks for checking out this wall pad project at the Boys and Girls Club in Laredo, Texas. We've installed a lot of wall pads, but this is the first time that we had to build the wall beforehand. The building was constructed in 1943 by H.B. Zachary and was occupied by the USO during World War II. The Boys and Girls Club took up occupancy a few years later in 1946. It would be nearly 40 years before Boys Club of Laredo would become Boys and Girls Club of Laredo. You can learn more about the history of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Laredo on the About Us page on their website. There's a link in the description below. The 40s era stone walls were not suitable for direct attachment of the wall pads. There would have been no way to properly attach them and have a nice, smooth, even pad surface. So we built a wall. I designed the wall layout in AutoCAD. This helped nail down the design and materials list. I also find that creating the design this way helps me think through the construction process. So when I get to the job site, I'm ready to go. I don't have to waste time on site trying to figure things out. Once on site, our first task was to build the wall sections. Altogether, we would need just over 60 studs. To ensure all of these were the exact same length, we set up a cutting station. Ernesto did much of the cutting while I marked the lumber for proper alignment and hole locations. We pre-drilled all the holes and then worked together assembling the wall sections and moving them into position. Before mounting the wall panels, we first laid a bottom plate. This was a 2x4 that was screwed down to the hardwood gym floor. When doing this, we had to ensure that these 2x4s were in proper alignment and set far enough from the wall that none of the stones protruding from the wall would interfere with our new wall. Once the bottom plate was set, we could then position the completed wall sections. We put a laser level near the middle of the gym. This was used to help align the top edge of each wall section. We placed shims between the bottom plate and the bottom of the wall to bring the top of the wall up to the level of the laser. In some areas, these shims were as much as an inch thick. That's kind of an indication of just how out of level the wood floor was. With the first 4 wall sections in place, we took the final measurement for the remaining space and then constructed the last wall section for the front of the gym. This panel was quickly anchored and leveled. We fastened the lumber walls to the stone wall with metal L brackets, making sure that the wall was plumb along the way. This photo shows one of the metal brackets anchored to the concrete portion of the wall. The last step in building the walls was to add a top plate. This brought the top of the wall up to 6 foot 2 inches in areas which did not require the leveling shims. It was a bit higher where we had added the shims, but the top of the wall was perfectly level. Ordinarily, we would have made the wall a few inches taller in order to raise the pads a few more inches off the floor. But Mr. Noyola, the CEO, had requested that the pads be as close to the floor as possible. Here's a photo showing the completed framing on the gym's front wall. If you look closely, you'll see the leveling shims at the bottom. You can also see the slight unlevelness of the wood floor. Before you think that's due to age, I have seen brand new buildings with similar floor slope. But it could also be due to age and possibly subsurface soils movement. Ernesto stapled vinyl cove molding to the bottom of the new wall. Ordinarily, cove molding would be glued, but in this case, I wanted everything to be able to be easily disassembled and reused when the old wood floor is replaced. As Ernesto worked on the cove molding, I continued prepping wood for the wall sections at the rear of the gym. This end of the gym was certainly more complicated because of all the doorways. I'd like to take a quick detour to let you know that our primary business is the sale and installation of Sport Court gym flooring. Here are a few of our recent projects. Sport Court is the safest gym floor in the world. If you don't know much about it, I encourage you to jump over to my website or look for other videos on this channel. I'll drop a link in the video description. Okay, let's get back to these wall pads. Just like we did at the front wall of the gym, we anchored a bottom plate to the wood floor. Then each stud wall section was leveled with shims and screwed to the bottom plate. Just a side note, there were no nails used on this project. Everything was screwed together. I believe this is a better method, and it was necessary so that everything could be easily removed when the old floor is replaced. Wall sections were fastened to the stone wall with the metal L brackets, and then the top plate was added. Ernesto then installed the cove molding while I moved back to the other end of the gym to begin installing the wall pads. I started with the corner pad by the main entry door of the gym. From there, I worked my way towards the window. Now, if you're wondering about the color scheme of these pads, Mr. Noyola wanted a lot of color to brighten up the gym. I cannot ignore that we live in a politically charged world, but I'm pretty sure that Mr. Noyola was not trying to make any political statements with this color scheme, and I'm certainly not either. He just wanted a rainbow of color to give more life to an old gym. These pads went up pretty quickly. There were no electrical outlets or light switches on this wall, so there were no cutouts in any of the pads. This really speeds up the installation. The only pad to be modified on this wall was the pad at the very end by the windows. With this last pad in place, the front end of the gym was complete, and I could move back to the rear wall. Ernesto and I started with corner pads at the storage room door and then began attaching the flat wall pads. Joe Garza, the sports director for the Boys and Girls Club, stopped in periodically to check our progress. I don't think I've ever seen Joe without his University of Texas ball cap, and on this day he also had a UT t-shirt. No doubt that Joe was a die-hard Longhorns fan. We continued installing the corner pads and wall pads the following morning. I had ordered corner pads to go at each doorway. This served two functions. The first is that the pads would cover the end of my stud walls. The second was hiding the gap between my stud wall and the stone wall. And if the pads covered a little more of the stone in the doorways, that was just an added benefit. 4 of the wall pads had to be trimmed down to less than 24 inches wide. Ernesto removed the staples so that I could pull back the vinyl and cut the pads. Pads for the doors also had to be modified. The primary exit doors and the door going into the kitchen had push bars. The door to the storage room had a doorknob. All of the door pads had to be modified to fit around these things. Altogether, there were 13 pads that had to be modified, including the single wall pad on the front wall of the gym by the windows. The other 12 were on this back wall. These modifications took up the majority of the day. The final step was cleanup. We swept and vacuumed. I have always strived to leave a project as clean or cleaner than when we arrived. We completed the project in just 3 days. Here's a final look at the front wall and the rear wall. I'm really happy with the final result, and Joe has indicated that everyone thinks the pads are a nice upgrade for this old gym. It's been a few months since these pads were installed. The Boys and Girls Club has asked us to install wall pads at their other location. Those pads are already ordered. And, in case you're wondering, Mr. Noyola chose the rainbow color scheme for this other gym as well. Thanks for watching. God bless. To learn more about our products and services, please visit southtexassportcourt.com. Sport Court is a registered trademark. Various design characteristics of products manufactured by Sport Court are either patented or have patents pending. Though other products in the marketplace may look similar to Sport Court, these knockoff products do not provide the energy-absorbing safety benefits, longevity, quality, or value that is provided by Sport Court surfacing and related products.